Welcome! This is the first in a series of YouTube videos where I introduce you to the wonderful world of hypnosis and hypnotism. But first I'd like to give you a little bit of background about how I came to be a hypnotist. Now, back in the 90s, I found out about a new system, new to me anyway, called Neuro-Linguistic Programming, or NLP for short. Now, NLP was not a new thing back then because it had been created back in the 1970s by two gentlemen called John Grinder and Richard Bandler. They didn't actually gain any traction in the UK until the 90s, when a couple of TV and media personalities started to talk about this system. So I started to learn a little bit about it, and it sounded like something I really wanted to get into, because the process involved, psychology, therapy, psychotherapy, linguistics, why we say what we do, why we do what we do, and it sounded like something that would really appeal to me. And I will try to explain NLP as best as I can, but it's really not very easy because it's a melting pot of all sorts of different things. But on its most basic level, Bandler and Grinder went out and studied people in therapy fields of different disciplines to find out why they were particularly successful at what they did. The two people within the psychotherapy field that they were particularly interested in were Franz Perls and Virginia Satir. And from the world of hypnotism, they were interested in a chap called Milton Erickson, and that's where you get the phrase Ericksonian hypnosis from. What they particularly liked about Erickson was when he spoke to people, when he was doing a session with people, he would speak to them in a particular way, and he seemed to get much deeper and miraculous results than people who didn't use this kind of process that he did. Now, up until that point, my impression of hypnotism wasn't particularly good, because my only point of reference up until then was what I'd read in the media and what I'd seen on TV and in the movies. And that didn't paint a particularly good picture, because, films and Hollywood, as they are, they like to sensationalize things, and hypnosis was often used as a prop for gaining control over people. But as I found out, it's nothing like that at all. In fact, it's completely the opposite. And in addition to that, I realised that hypnosis wasn't something we were introducing to people like a new language or something. It's actually something we do, but we're not really aware we're doing it, so we can't have control over it. And what hypnosis teaches us is that you can make it into a process. So what happens in a non-media version of hypnotism is, when you're working with a hypnotist, you are fully participating in the process. You have complete control of what's going on, and you're fully aware of what's being said to you and what's being asked of you. Now, during a session, you can choose to drift off and daydream and, check out, drift away, whatever you want to call it, because the hypnotist isn't really concerned with how you're thinking on a conscious level. So, if you want to daydream during your session with your hypnotist, you can go ahead and do it, and you will still get benefit from having that session with your hypnotist. So anyway, go back to this NLP training I did, and halfway through the course we were introduced to hypnotism, and basically what we did was we broke up into groups and we practiced taking somebody into trance and also being a participant and experiencing a hypnotic trance as well. And the particular exercise we did involved working with ideomotor signals. Now, ideomotor signals are those involuntary movements you have that are outside of your conscious control. A good example is like a nervous twitch. You know it's happening, you're aware of it, but there's not really an awful lot you can do about it. And this particular exercise we did, we would put another student into a hypnotic trance and get their arm to move. And it's really difficult to explain this and how it feels to somebody if they've not experienced it themselves, but it was quite an odd sensation, not unpleasant, and the whole exercise completely blew my mind. And I actually decided when I came out of my hypnotic trance that this was something I really wanted to concentrate on, because I could see the potential for this being used in ways I couldn't even contemplate back then. And realizing it's a completely natural thing that we do. And I'll give you a good example. When you learn to drive, you go through several stages when you're learning to drive. When you first get in the car, it's just completely mind-boggling. You look at, if you're driving a manual car, you look at the gear stick and the clutch pedal and the brake pedal and the accelerator or gas pedal, and you think, how on earth can I concentrate on what my feet are doing, what my hands are doing, and what's going on outside? I've got enough on my plate just trying to work out, where my hands and my feet are. And the reason for that is when you learn to drive, you're doing everything on a conscious level. You are monitoring everything that your hands and your feet are doing. But you can't actually learn properly how to drive that car until you get to the point where you trust yourself enough to hand part of that process over to your subconscious. You're still doing it, you're still driving the car, but you know how to do it so well that you're not having to think through the process as you're doing it. And if you're not thinking about the process, you've basically handed it over to your subconscious. Now, that can work to your detriment as well when you're driving, because I'm sure most of you who drive a car have run a red light at least once while you've been driving, probably when you first started to drive. You've daydreamed, you've missed your exit, you've gone autopilot and started driving to work when it was Saturday. And this is basically when you're so confident in your ability to drive that you've handed too much over to your subconscious. And this is why, occasionally it doesn't always work as you expect it to, because you've handed too much over to your subconscious and you're not really paying attention to what you're doing. So, you have a gift. Everybody has this gift. But most of us don't know how to use it. So, even if you only ever visited a hypnotist once, you would see how you could use a process to gain a bit of control over the subconscious part of your thinking, and you could achieve so much more. Now, as I say, anyone can do it because you're doing it already, you're just not consciously aware of doing it. And the reason why you need to use hypnosis or something like hypnosis is when you're thinking about doing something or changing a habit or changing your emotional feeling towards things, is generally you're always going to be at odds with the thinking part of your brain. For example, if you're trying to regulate how you eat, or you're trying to stop a bad habit, you're willing yourself on a conscious level to stop doing that behaviour, but your subconscious may be thinking that what it is that you're doing is not detrimental. And unless you have a way of communicating with that subconscious part of your thinking, you'll always be clashing the conscious part of your thinking with the subconscious part of your thinking. What hypnosis does is allow all parts of your thinking to come to an agreement. Now, your subconscious regulates things like your emotions, the way you react to things, and it also looks after the basic regulation of your bodily functions like breathing, how fast your heart's going, whether you're hot or cold. And you can bring these things into conscious awareness and manipulate them, but not for a long period of time, because it takes an awful lot of effort to think about breathing, to think about your heart rate, to think about whether you're hot or cold, whether to shiver, whether to be warm. And that's why we hand it over to our subconscious, because you couldn't be thinking about that many things during the day because you'd never get anything done. You have to hand a large percentage of your day-to-day function to your subconscious in order to be able to function as a person during the day. Now, I mentioned briefly about emotions, and I also mentioned about daydreaming. Dreaming is the language of your subconscious. So if you have and your emotions, so if you lack confidence or you have bad dreams, these are things that can be manipulated by hypnosis. For example, bad dreams, it's normally how your subconscious communicates to you that you have something, there is a problem in your life that needs to be addressed. Hypnosis it's as old as the hills. It goes back to Egyptian times and beyond. It's really not a new thing. It's just that we're just now learning how valuable a tool it is. I really do want people to be the best that they can be. And it's been my mission since I started to learn about hypnotism to just show someone a glimpse at the hidden potential that they have when they learn to be able to manipulate things that they think are outside of their control. So, in closing, thank you for listening. It's been a pleasure to explain hypnotism briefly to you. I encourage you to come and see me on the website, and you can drop me an email and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thank you. Have a nice day.